Yeah, every app could be dangerous, says Jeremy and Jasper. Look at Roblox, yeah, and yeah, a lot of kids are on the Roblox. So, if you want to come up into the box and share, a story of any sort, then you are very welcome to come up into the box. What I will ask everyone, and I did this on Tuesday when we did the Women's Health Live, is to keep whatever you are sharing on topic. Even if there is like a long backstory, make sure you shorten it, so that we don't end up wasting a lot of time when we can have more people sharing. And also, just be mindful of what you're saying, that you're not going to trigger either me, the host, or other people in the room as well. So if we can keep that in mind too. Evening, Richard.
Hello, I am absolutely loving this new format.
Are you loving it?
I did, you know what? I didn't have the balls to do something similar a while ago, and I think this is what it needs. It needs to go back to being an educational place. There's so many people on here that can learn from this shit. I think it's amazing. I love it. So
Listen,
I love it.
thank you, Rich. We've had an amazing week doing the lives that we've done this week, and they've been so positive, and they've genuinely helped people. And I've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed just not doing just drama.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's important to make sure that this stuff's woven in on it.
Yeah.
On topic and on internet safety.
Go on.
Of my background working within schools,
Yeah.
I think it's one of the biggest issues that we have to face with an education system. Because, so I'll use my own experience when I was at school. I was bullied at school, quite severely. I was a tiny human being back then.
Can't believe that.
Oh, I was like that. What went wrong? But when I left school, it was left at school.
Yeah.
Now we live within this world where the bullying is consistent as 24/7. And I am strongly with the fact that I don't really believe that kids should have access to a smartphone until the age of 16. I don't feel like there's no, and I know there's arguments for it, but I feel like there's no rhyme or reason to it. Why do children need access to WhatsApp? When you can make a phone call up your friends, meet up with your friend, or parents can do that between each other. Why does a child need access to Facebook? Why does a child need access to, at 13, why does a child need access to TikTok? I mean, you look at the adults, and I take myself as an example. I've gone through phases where I'm so heavily engrossed within this app, for example, that I would say that is an addiction. Now imagine that being applied to a developing mind. And you look at, sorry, I'm going to stop waffling in a second. You look at the increase in bad behaviour within schools, and then you look at that alongside the increase of the use of technology.
Yeah.
Nobody's admitting the correlation. I've worked with so many children that I've been told have got this and they've got that. And when I've worked with them, they are exhibiting exactly the same behaviours as people I've worked with that have addiction to the substances.
Yeah.
But we ignore it. So internet safety isn't just about keeping children safe and making sure they don't open up the floodgates too early and flood their little minds that are still developing. It's also about being fully aware of the impact that then has on children's developing brains.
I agree.
It's severe, it's horrendous, it's terrible. But I'll let somebody else chime in. I'll sit here.
All right. Thank you, Richard. Appreciate you.
Just really quickly, Rich, because there was a question in the comments while you was talking then, from Steph saying, do schools in England have a safeguarding officer?
They do. And I think the difficulty that schools always find, I mean, I don't work in the education system anymore, but the difficulty the schools always find is there's a line that they cannot cross. There's a point where in which it's parents have to take responsibility. And I think what schools are doing now is schools are expected to solve all these problems, but these problems are easily solved by parents. Don't let your child have a smartphone. Or if they have a smartphone, I work in technology, every single smartphone, you can restrict the apps that the child has access to.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that particularly outside of the home, there's only need for a child to have got access to WhatsApp.
Yeah, and and if people are giving their kids, as they're going transition into secondary school and things, a phone, to communicate, with parents and stuff, I think that's fine. But I think you're right. It's why do they need to have access to these other apps?
Yeah, 100%.
Why?
I look at how things were when I was a kid, and I think me and you, Remy, are similar ages. And like, and I know we live in a different world, but it's not that different. If I wanted to meet up with my friends, we'd organise. It might be on MSN Messenger, but that was in front of my parents. We might arrange to meet up, and then we'd meet up at that time. I'd get dropped off. We'd meet up at that time, and then before it got dark, I'd be back home.
MSN Messenger, you're having a fucking laugh at you. I was at a phone box slotting in 10p's.
Yes,
making
or
phone calls before Messenger was even out.
0800 reverse.
I remember having to reverse call because I didn't have any 10p's. And then I get told off for reverse calling when I got home.
I was doing that up until the age of 18. My parents hated me at 3 in the morning. There's a reverse charge call for Richard Watts. No, Dad, I've got no money, pick me up. But
Yeah.
there's, I believe, being able to make a phone call.
Haley's back!
Hello, Haley.
That's my voice for Haley then. Hi, Haley.
Big up Haley Comet.
I believe in like being able to make contact with parents. I think, but you can do that off of. You still have the Nokia 3610 being sold. You can do that. In
Yeah.
actual fact, sending a text message and making a phone call is more likely to get through than it is a WhatsApp.
Yeah.
And like I look at it from a separated parent perspective. When Thomas is old enough to make that decision, I want Thomas to be able to video call me when he wants.
Yeah.
But he video calls me from home. And he's only got access to, for example, the Duo app to be able to do that. And you can again restrict that down to him being able to only call certain contacts. I just think that it's too easy to say yes.
Yeah, it is.
And it's harder to say no because everybody's got one.
Yeah, the guilt and the pressure of that. Yeah, for sure.
100%. And there is pressure. There is pressure in that. And but I think,
isn't it, when they're in high school and if all their friends have got a smartphone and if they're the only one without it, then you've got that parent guilt
Yeah.
for not having what everybody else has got. And if it's the norm for everyone else to have, it should be the norm. It should be the norm for them not to have a phone, I guess. And it should be the exception to the rule, the children that do. But unfortunately, that's just not the way it is. I gave my son my old phone when he was about 14, I think, when he got his first smartphone. I just gave him my old phone just so he had a phone to contact me when he was out on his bike all the time.
Yeah.
So that he could contact us or whatever. But he never had any apps on it or anything like that. On his Xbox, he would play online with his friends. But look, I was really fortunate that he was never interested in social media, and he still isn't, to be fair. He's just not interested. He still preferred to go out on his bike or in his car and physically see his friends. He's not very good at communicating in that way anyway. But I did always have that worry about him playing games online, and who, I don't understand all that kind of like Xbox playing live with your friends and all that stuff. And I just used to trust him. I did put a lot of trust in him, I think.
Yeah.
But he's, my son's 18 now, nearly 19. So I think that it was very different when he was little.
Yeah.
That he had an iPod for music and and no phone.
The old iPod. I feel like it's a very different generation now.
I feel like it's quite scary how much technology has advanced in such a short space of time as well.
Technology's advanced and society's expectations and society as a whole and how it functions is changing to function around technology and social media.
Yeah.
So this app has been designed, I think this app specifically has been designed to keep you on it for as long as possible.
Yeah.
And it's been likened to a gambling app. And a little bit like, there is a lawsuit happening in America, I think, at the moment. I'm sure it's in America. That's where all the lawsuits happen, isn't it? Against Tinder, because that's also been likened to a gambling app where they keep you on the hook and you're never really matched with someone that you're aligned with. It's always slightly off kilter.
Yeah.
So and there's a lawsuit against Tinder at the moment, like a class action lawsuit, because they're saying basically it's keeping people in that paid system
Yeah.
where they're paying each month because they think that having the paid version of Tinder is going to find them true love or whatever. And it's actually very much like gambling. They're swiping. It's the dopamine hits.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening to children. I'm a third year psychology student, and we've been learning about obviously there's a massive prevalence of people being diagnosed with ADHD and autism now, where we weren't before. And I don't think that it's necessarily that there are more. I just think that we know more about it. But at the same time, there's belief that we're creating an almost ADHD type brain because of the dopamine addiction from a young age.
Yeah. I mean, like, in my daughter's class, there are 10-year-olds who bring their phones in. There's probably 9-year-olds that bring their phones into school. Like, not my kid, but, like, she'll tell me her friends have got phones and stuff. It's in their hands. Like, if they go out on a school trip, they'll be on a coach with their phones in that. Like, I'm like, what is happening?
It's really difficult. So, circumstances play a lot in how we parent.
Yes.
And circumstances that we've been through contribute a lot to how we parent. Because I know growing up, I didn't always have the latest phone. I didn't always have branded trainers. And I used to get bullied for that. And that quite heavily. And that has stuck with me through to adulthood to where now, and I'll say it, Dylan's a spoiled brat. Yes.
Yeah, I hear you there. Yeah.
I won't buy him a pair of trainers unless it's like Nike or Adidas. I won't, and that's because of my own anxieties and the things that I went through growing up. Now, Dylan had a phone from a very young age because he spent a lot of time in hospital, so it was a way for him to be able to socialise. But the only people's numbers he ever had in it was family, and obviously I was there with him 24/7 when he was using it.
Yeah.
I got Dylan his first proper grown up on his own. This is your birthday. Here's your phone. At the end of June this year. Ever before then, he was just getting sort of my cast-offs. Last week, I had to phone the police in order to protect him from homophobic behaviour that was going on Snapchat.
Wow.
And I check that boy's phone every night. I always have, and I always will until the day he turns 18 and is solely responsible for himself. So and it's something that I've built into him having a phone.
Yeah.
So with his routine, there's no, you're not having my phone, because come 7 o'clock, that phone comes to me.
Yeah, it's built in.
He's having a late one tonight, and he's overexcited because he's having a bonding phone call right now, as I've just been informed.
He is.
So it's always been built into give mum the phone. He doesn't know that I check his phone.
Yeah.
He just knows he gives me the phone and off he goes to bed.
Yeah.
That's the rule. But because we have open conversations, and this is why it's so important, when you are going to get your kid their first phone, you need to know they're ready for that and they're ready for that level of responsibility. Because as soon as he got a homophobic message last week, the first thing he did was come downstairs and tell me.
Yeah. And my daughter did the same thing with her Snapchat thing. Like, and again, it's because there's open communication there, that they know that, oh, I need to go and tell mum, like, this is bad. Like, she literally was like, mum, this is bad. You know, then I read it and I was like, yeah, it is bad, and we're going to do something about it. And also, never again.
And
like, Snapchat is gone.
But I guess they've both proved that they can be trusted then in that way. You've put the trust in them, and then they've come back with the proof of being able to be trusted in those situations, haven't they?
And if you're unsure on whether it is the right time or whether you should get your kid a phone, there are resources out there to help you. So the main one is on the NSPCC have teamed up with Vodafone, and they've created what they call the Trust Toolkit for your child's first phone. and it's called Trust because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different sections of this course. The first one, the T, is talking about safe phone use. It goes on about recognising rights to safety online, using online safety and wellbeing tools, support when facing challenges online, and talking about online safety going forward. And this is, I wish I would have had this years ago, because I've had to teach myself how to keep my child safe online. Whereas this, it has everything there, and it talks, you go through it, the idea behind it is you go through it with your child, and you go through the sections and you learn all the points, and then at the end it gives you different scenarios for you to say, okay, so in this scenario, what would you do? And it's got loads, at the end of each unit, there's loads of different scenarios, and it's just a really useful resource that people can use. And I don't think things like this are shouted about and talked about enough for us as parents. And it can be really hard sometimes as parents to find the time to sit down and to go on Google and to find these things.
Yeah.
Especially when you're not very tech savvy.
Agreed. And I think it's also understanding. So I'll use EE as an example, because up until today I did work for them. I'm not anymore. But EE. So
You're not there anymore, Rich?
no, I'll send you a private message.
All right, okay, cool. Carry on. Yeah, so drop the name of the site, please, for everyone in the chat, darling.
I'm doing it now.
Rich.
So with EE as an example, so if you've got EE broadband and you've got an EE mobile phone and you've got your child's phone on your contract, through your EE app, you can control data access. You can turn the data off to your child's phone if you want to. You can also do that through your EE router using the app to specific devices within the household. So at, 8 p.m, there's no Wi-Fi access for a PlayStation, the phone that your child has, so on and so forth. You have complete control on that. And and like Gita said, you can control certain websites. It takes a little bit of hunting and going through the app and a little bit of Googling to figure out how to do it. But once you know how to do it, it's really, really simple. But it's things like that you can do, because A, you've got the protection within the home so they can't access it through the Wi-Fi. And then you can ensure that when they're out and about, they're not accessing things they shouldn't be accessing, because, again, you've got that complete control. So I definitely think it's really worth. I'm not sure how O2 do it, but I think most of the networks have something in place now where you have that level of control over things as well. And I wanted to ask people in the box and people in the comments, would you let your 13-year-old child go travelling around the world by themselves?
Absolutely not.
Just wait for some comments. Thumbs up if you would, thumbs up, down if you wouldn't.
Hell no to the no.
My son's going next year, and I still don't want to let him. He'll be nearly 20 then.
But some of us are very comfortable with our children having devices in their hands that allow them to access the entire world and the people that live within it.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's why I get so sort of worked up about some of the stuff that happens on this app, because we can't control other people allowing their children on here. But what we should be able to do as adults is try and stop them from being exposed to some of the absolute dog shit that they see on here.
Yeah.
This was why I had to ring the police last week, because I went to school, told them that this child who was in Dylan's class had said what they'd said, and I got told, well, it's happened out of school, we can't do anything about it. I was like, okay, so what do you want me to do? It was like, well, we'd advise you to contact the police. So that's what I did. And I didn't expect the police to take it seriously, but they did. And they went to school the very next day and they spoke with the child involved. And it weren't a case of ringing the police to have charges brought. The kids, they're going to make mistakes and they need to learn from them. And the reason I did it was because I thought, if I don't take an opportunity to educate this child, they're going to be the ones that are growing up, that are the ones that are on this app saying hateful things, showing horrendous behaviours as adults because of the lack of education they've had as children.
Yeah, I think that I'm not. This is not by any means a judgment of parents that do this, because sometimes it can't be avoided because of, our busy schedules or not having any help or whatever. But I think that sometimes phones and YouTube videos can be used as like babysitters in a way. For kids. And I know that somebody I remember, it was a few years ago, so her daughter would have been about 7 at the time. And I said, have you heard what she's watching in there on YouTube? And it was in the other room. And it was somebody sort of like doing a reenactment with 2 Barbie dolls. From the outside, it looked like a children's thing, but it wasn't. It was really sexual. And it was done in like a little childlike voice with 2 Barbie dolls on the screen. Somebody was manipulating the dolls. And if you just walked past the living room and saw your kid watching Barbie dolls on TV and you were really busy, I guess that it would be easy to think that that's what it was. And it wasn't at all. It was really seedy and disgusting. And this little girl was, very young, and actually very young even for her age. And it really shocked me. But that's how people are baited on the internet.
That's horrifying.
Yeah, absolutely horrifying, because that's, obviously purposely to get little girls in there, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's been so many dangerous trends that have resulted in young children
losing their lives.
Because of influence. And it happened locally to us earlier this year, and it's horrendous. Like, the things that children are being exposed to. And I think sometimes some parents are just naive because they're not on these apps themselves.
Yeah.
They think, well, what's the worst that can happen?
I think there's a sense,
because we didn't have them either. And but even when the internet first became, I remember having dial-up internet on a PC and MSN Messenger, and that must have been when I was about 13 or 14 when we first got the internet at home. And it just wasn't a thing then at all. It wasn't, you logged in and you logged out, and your mum shouted down the phone line for you to get off the phone so she could phone someone. And you were, it was just, it wasn't. And so, and my sister calls me a dinosaur because I refuse to keep up with technology. I just don't want to know. Not interested in knowing how to do things on the computer, apart from the things I have to do. And I think there's a lot of people there out there that haven't had access to learn about technology or apps that are available now. So how can they educate the children?
Absolutely.
I think a lot of it is as parents are desensitized because they see a lot of this themselves. It's all right. It's not that bad. It's just. We live in a bizarre world where we accept far more as normality than we should do. Far more as normality. And the problem is what we end up with is like and sorry to bring it around to this, but like some of the creators and the attitudes of some of the creators that we have on this app.
Yes.
Because as much as the internet opens up the world to people, what you will notice, particularly with social media, is then what it then does is close that world down on them very quickly and will put them into a bubble. So I've said it before, echo chambers. You go into a room as a young adult, and let's take racism as an example. You're a young white boy, and you go into a room where these cool-looking men that are talking crudely about people of other races. And you like that. And then suddenly more of that, because of the algorithms, exactly how social media work, more of that is then appearing on your feed. Now let's remember in about, I think it's years 6, 7, and 8, children go through another set of schema. So this is where they start to break close relationship, friendship, family relationships, and start to develop bonds with people outside of the family group. So imagine this happening during that space of time. Then suddenly they're seeing all of this, and because the algorithm keeps pushing that sort of information in front of them, suddenly we're seeing extremism, and we're seeing more and more extremism across a multitude of issues and demographics because of how algorithms work on social media.
And I think that happens as well when children in their real lives are excluded, bullied, feeling isolated, or whatever, and not accepted. They haven't got a social circle or even a good friend. And then they find a community online. And I think that this happens on here as well, with vulnerable people as well. And you see people sitting in these horrendous rooms with just full of hatred and just disgustingness. And I think, how many people in here are just in here because they feel accepted in here, because they're vulnerable, because they want to feel like they're part of something, and they want to feel like they've got a community and they've got friends.
Well,
And even as far as vulnerable adults, not just children, or even just lonely adults.
I can tell you for free, when I was younger, I craved a place where I would be accepted. I was very secular. I was focused upon swimming. Swimming was my life. And I'm so glad that I didn't have access to what's access today, because I could be a very different human being today. Because I was, at that point in my life, I was exceptionally vulnerable. Exceptionally vulnerable.
And I think at the same time, I'm very grateful to have social media for myself, because I, as an autistic woman, I suffer a lot with burnout. So when I go out to work, I have to have a couple of days then of sort of not speaking to anyone in the real world. But I use TikTok, for example, as a way to socialise.
Yeah.
But I have got, enough about me already before TikTok came into my life, where I wouldn't be, I'm not that vulnerable, you know what I mean? To be sort of sucked in to those kind of dark places. But I think that there are a lot of people that are, and I think there are a lot of people without the critical thinking skills to say, no, that's not right.
I think it's important as well as adults that we also recognise that if you are watching dark things and your kids are in the house while you're doing it, at some point they're going to hear it.
Absolutely.
And if they think that it's acceptable for you to be around that and for you to be watching that, then they're going to think that it's acceptable too.
Well, so a child's brain is like a sponge until they're 7. So they literally absorb the environment around them completely until they're 7. And I mean, obviously, it goes beyond that, but it's that their brain is very sponge-like until they're 7.
Yeah, and I think as parents, we have to take responsibility to, in an appropriate way for their age, have difficult conversations before we hand them a phone or before we give them that access. You need to be having the conversations of, there are things online that you should not be seeing and you should not be accessing. And because it's easy to just hand a kid a phone and think, oh, well, they're only kids. But one wrong click on the internet and you can be seeing some horrendous things. And that's why content filters are important. That's why having your parental settings are important. But also the conversations, because this stuff does filter through sometimes.
And how come? I mean, what I don't find really difficult to understand is that why, when you sign up for a social media, I mean, I think they should all be 18 plus anyway. I don't think there's any need for anyone under the age of 18 to be on a social media app that's got adults on it, especially not one like this. And I wonder, why can't they do some sort of facial recognition sort of thing where they estimate your age before you sign up, or I don't know, something. There's got to be a way for them to put things like locks in place to stop.
I've been trying to petition for ages for social media companies to use ID verification, so that an account is linked to an individual, and you have to use like your personal ID to verify the account. Some companies do it already, but they tend to be more like your adult content companies that do it. But I think that there is more that can be done from the apps, 100%. But again, they don't like to. There's this whole thing about freedom of speech, and
it's money at the end of the day, isn't it? It's money,
and that's it. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. It comes down to money, because I know for some apps like Telegram, things like that, the whole point of Telegram is to be anonymous. And there's political reasons for that, there's personal reasons for that. But I don't think anonymous platforms are healthy, because it allows people to have content and not be held accountable for what they're doing.
I think anonymity gives people they feel more free to say disgusting things, you know.
It removes the ladder of consequence, which, funnily enough, I was going to mention earlier. The ladder of consequence very rarely exists in the education system anymore. Whereas I'm a strong believer of a ladder of consequence. At some point, the consequence for your actions needs to increase dependent upon what those actions are. But when you're anonymous, you can do whatever the hell you want to do.
Yeah, and I think like going back to what you said before about, you know, ultimately the responsibility lies at the feet of the parents. And I agree with you. But unfortunately, there are parents that aren't educated themselves, or that don't care enough to educate their children.
Yeah. And this is the point I'm making, is that as parents, we need to care, because as adults, what we see as harmful content as adults is completely different to what is harmful content for children. So, for example, take pornographic content, for example. Pornographic content, it isn't exactly harmful to me if I see it. It's not harmful to me if I see it. I can just press the block button, whatever, I can move on from it. But for my 13-year-old to see pornographic content, that could be quite harmful to him.
Absolutely. Could be quite damaging, to be honest, and I think quite traumatic.
For some of it, definitely. And this is why we need to, as adults and as parents, we need to be having these difficult conversations in age-appropriate ways, so that when our children have these devices, they are aware of the content that is harmful to them.
Yeah. And I think that things like Snapchat, the messages can disappear, don't they?
Yeah.
So that's a difficult one for parents to monitor, full stop, isn't it, really?
This is why Dylan's phone gets checked every single night. Every night, without fail. And last week, I was taking screenshots of the messages because I knew they were going to disappear, and he was getting messages as I'm taking screenshots, and I'm on his phone going, Dylan, why are you screenshotting? Dylan, why are you screenshotting? Because obviously it tells you if you take a screenshot. Yeah. But again, some parents wouldn't even know how to do that, or that you could do that. And this is what the trust toolkit that I was talking about earlier, one of the things it really homes in on is, as a parent, if you're allowing your child to have a device, you need to either be tech savvy yourself, or you need to find someone who is to help you, because what will happen is your child will end up outsmarting you, and the things that you put in place to protect them, they'll very quickly learn how to undo. And if you don't know where to go to look to check that they're all still there, you may as well have not put them on in the first place.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of bad when it comes down to children and their access to the internet. But I think it wouldn't be right if we were chatting about this and not talk about the benefits of it. So I vlog about
no, sorry. I just going to say I agree completely with what Richard said, because the internet can be a massively helpful tool for kids at sometimes.
Yeah.
yes, 100%. You look at so I vlog about me and the boys when I've got them, and my youngest, he can struggle creatively sometimes. He can struggle expressing himself sometimes. And when I'm recording the videos and the stuff that we're doing, he loves it. He loves to get involved. He loves to come up with ideas. Even if at the age of 4, almost 5, he'll be like, when I'm editing it in CapCut, he'll be like, "Oh, Daddy, can we do this? And can we add this to it?" And comes up with different ideas. And I love that part of social media and the internet, because it gives him an opportunity to be creative in his way. And I think that it massively, when it comes down to internet safety, the responsibility lies on the parents. And I've said this when I've had delivering triple P courses at school, parenting courses, is that we can't keep blaming others. We have to take responsibility. We are the adult. Whether our children like it or not, we are the adult. Up until the age of 18, it is our job and it's our responsibility to protect those children. And sometimes that involves pissing our children off and saying no.
Yeah, it does. Rich, let me just
100%.
jump in right there, just because you've said about it's our responsibility. 100% is. So my son's had Snapchat since he was like 7 years old. He only had me, his dad, and his grandma on it. That's the only people he had on it. The only reason he had it is because he liked to send the pictures of the broccoli, him with his broccoli, etc. You get it. If you've got kids, you get it. However, around that time, I had a restraining order put on somebody, who then managed to find my child's app because their Apple ID was linked to mine. Managed to find them on Snapchat and managed to add them. Had I not been such a vigilant parent, I wouldn't have caught that before he did. But I did, luckily. Very luckily caught it. So then that went into another 3 years on the restraining order, but that's besides the point. You have to be a vigilant parent, because these things can happen. As much as you think they won't, they can, and they will. And all you need to do, as long as your kids are under the age of, let's say, 16, be that fucking annoying parent that checks their phone all the time. Be that fucking irritating parent that is going to go, right, I need to check that, because they will thank you in the long run, because they will still be innocent.
And I think that's a really important point, that you're not supposed to be friends with your kids. It's nice to have a friendship with your children and to have a friendly relationship with your kids, but you're not supposed to be friends with them, and pissing them off is part of being a parent, unfortunately, because you've got their best interest at heart. They're not developed enough to understand that you're protecting them.
No, they haven't got the emotional maturity to understand.
Yeah.
I straight
And I
up.
tell you what, I have pissed my child off numerous times by taking his phone off him altogether. And I tell you what, when I do that, he's a much better behaved child.
Always. Yeah. And for me, when my kid is annoyed with me or sulking with me or angry at me, I always just kind of give myself a little pat on the back, because I know I'm doing good parenting. Because it's it's not about making them happy all the time and doing whatever they want or letting them do whatever they want. It's about us having to be the adult and, put the rules in place and make sure that they are safe, whether or not it means they're going to have a strop, slam doors, be pissed off at us, whatever. And just on what Rich was saying earlier about consequences, I can't even tell you how many times my child has had that phone removed. I'm a parent that I will give you a warning, and if you don't listen, then there are consequences, and I follow through. And I think a lot of parents are scared sometimes to do that because of the reaction of the child, but we have to remember that we are the parents.
And boundaries are so healthy for children. Yeah. They are such an intrinsic part of being a human being. Our society is based upon boundaries. What are laws? They are boundaries. They're marks and things that you don't overstep. If you don't have an understanding of boundaries, if you don't have an understanding of no and why the no exists, you're never going to fully be able to function properly in society. And this is why we need to be teaching this to our children at a younger age.
Can we talk about how difficult it is to enforce those boundaries when you co-parent as well?
Well, I'm
it's
quite
really
lucky
difficult.
in regards to.
I'm the parent with boundaries. I'm the parent with discipline. I'm the parent with responsibilities, but I'm always the bad parent in my child's eyes.
Yeah, and you're going to have to be. You just
Yeah.
have to be, and that's it. End of story. Like, there's no, we can't even give you sympathy on that. Like, if there's two,
No, there
parents,
is no sympathy. I will
No.
always be the bad parent.
you're just going to have to be, because until they realise what the other parent is like, you just have to be that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been quite lucky in that regards because with both of the boys' mums, we sat down and did parenting plans, and we were like, "This is what stays consistent in both households." And when it comes down to discipline and the ladder of consequence and all of that, in every single circumstance, we are always on the same page. My eldest mum rang me the other day. And to be fair, in the end, it turned out he got sent home this wrong school report. So I felt really bad afterwards. But she rang up and she said, right, how are we going to approach this together as parents? I know a lot of people don't have that. But on that point, I think that if you have an opportunity to, if you're new to being a single parent and new to co-parenting, go onto the CAFCAS website and search parenting plan and work. So the idea of it is one of you works through the parenting plan, you hand it over to the other parent, they then fill out their opinions on it, and then you have a conversation around that. I understand, because when I first, with my eldest mums at the beginning, after the relationship broke down, communication wasn't easy. But it's such a great tool to use to then ensure that your child is at the centre of it. Does that make sense?
I think the problem is that, I mean, that's an amazing thing that exists. And I really wish that had been something that existed, 17 years ago when I broke up with my son's dad, because it's been really difficult to co-parent and have the same values and the same idea of what's right and wrong. I've just always had to trust that he will make the right decisions and just hope for the best, really, because we don't communicate with each other very well at all. But I think that's the thing, isn't it? Like, it's not everybody will have I think that a lot of the time that you find that parents are in competition with each other when they break up to be, the favourite and stuff like that. And that's where the boundaries get sort of blurred with things like technology, because one parent will let their kid do it just because the other parent said no, and they want to be, flavour of the week or whatever.
That's a perfect example for what happened in our house. So my child, it's not an internet issue, but it was a phone issue, which can then pass into internet. So my child was sending messages which were kind of like playing me and his dad off against each other, which weren't the truth. For example, one situation was, she's bought Ralphie this, she hasn't bought me anything, but that was a present from his Secret Santa from nursery, but he hadn't asked, so it wasn't actually a present, but there was no communication there. So then when his phone was taken away, a couple of weeks later, Dad's like, well, I want his phone. I'm going to take his phone. But there has to be an agreement on the discipline, the understanding, the boundaries, the respect, everything. But that's not always the case in all families. And it's something we've all got to face as parents. You've got to be the louder, stronger parent to make all this safety shit happen. Because otherwise, they're just going to get lost in it.
I'm married to my boy's dad, and even in our house we don't always agree, and Dylan has autism and he can have meltdowns, and his behaviour can sometimes be really challenging, and that's something that Rory struggles with. So I automatically have to become the stronger parent. And I think it is, even in married relationships, there's always good cop, bad cop with parenting. And sometimes, like, I notice the way Rory was brought up, it was completely different to how I was raised. Rory's upbringing was quite sort of, what's the word? The sort of really old school traditional parenting, kids should be seen and not heard, that type. Whereas I was raised by my mum on her own, and she raised me as an individual, and she raised me to have a voice from a very young age and to speak out and to speak my mind if I was upset about something. And that's how I've raised the boys. And it's took a long time for Rory to adjust to this style of parenting that I have. And I think sometimes parenting styles, even within marriages, can clash, and that can then cause issues. Because if Dylan does something wrong, straight away Rory's like, take his phone straight away, and I'm like, well, no, wait, you've got to, the consequence has got to match the behaviour. So if it's not something that, and we get into arguments all the time about it, because yeah, it is, Jade, it is harder sometimes.
And I think that's the important thing when it comes down to internet safety, isn't it? Is if there's anything in this day and age there should be a blanket agreement on, it should be how our children interact with the worldwide, I will emphasise the World Wide Web. Even if it's something as simple as you have internet safety posters in school, sit down. If you get on with this, even as sort of like if you're together or you've got a good enough relationship with a co-parent, sit down and create that internet safety poster together, and have contribution from your kid, contributions from both parents, and saying this is what safe on the internet looks like within our family, and then put that up in both households.
Can I just say, how many people on here, how many people's kids love Roblox? How many people's kids are obsessed with Roblox?
My son used to play it.
You can direct message on Roblox, and I found some very. I always taught my son never to reply. I gave him the rules of you never tell them what your real name is, you never tell them what your age is, you never tell them what your area is, you never tell them what your school is. And he still had messages of people which, as a grown-up, I could tell they were from grown-ups. But I was the one filtering those. But simple apps that we all let our kids on, like Roblox, they're heavily flooded with adults that have a different agenda.
Yeah, and sadly, if apps are being created for kids, sadly the adults who have a different agenda are going to flock there, because it's easy pickings for them there.
Yeah, and I think like things like, for example, on here, when you send a gift and it goes across the screen, like, you know, the little dog wagging its bum or whatever, you know, that's, kids are just like really attracted to, I know we're adults and we all enjoy it, but I think that is that not like really realistically being aimed at children?
Well, look at the a few months ago when people got outed for letting kids gift them. Look at all that.
Yeah. And I don't understand why more hasn't been done about that, because that's exploitation of children, surely.
But
you wouldn't take money off a child in the street.
Making money.
Yeah, but you know, you wouldn't get away with it if going into a youth club and conning the children out of money, would you?
But do you know when all that came out, do you know how many parents were justifying giving their kids pocket money to spend on this app to gift creators? That's
a really bad sort of tool to put in your kids' toolbox, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Really bad.
And like going back to before, what I said about this app being likened to a gambling app, it feels like a gambling app. It really feels like that sometimes. And I think sometimes, I mean, I tried to go to sleep without any noise on the other night, just no noise at all. And my brain was just overloaded with all the shit that I'd watched on TikTok that day. And it really is very addictive.
Yeah, if I ever have somebody in my life that is like a zero gifter and all of a sudden they start gifting, I always say to them, please don't start. Don't start, because I know that we've all been in that place where we've started and we regret it. Yeah, every single one of us has regretted it.
Yeah.
Good evening.
We've got some other people
to do that, thinking that they're gifting somebody that they care about, and then all of a sudden they're getting praise from the person that they idolise. It's wrong, and then the parents are facilitating that.
Yeah. Right, we've got some other people in the boxes.
I'm going to drop down, Remy, anyway. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Charlie,
so much. Comments. Bye, everyone.
Charlie. Bye.
Bye.
Hi, Candyman.
Good evening, Miss Remy. Good evening, Rich. How are you? Right, I've just been flicking through.
Never heard your voice before.
I've just stumbled across your live, Miss Remy, and not many people know where I originate from. Now, I originate from a different platform, and I used to be part of the hunting community over on Facebook. And what I used to do is I used to promote the safeguarding through social media apps. And one download in particular, which I recommend, I have it on all my godchildren's devices. I've recommended it to the parents and things. And like I said, it's a free download app. It operates with Android and iOS. So any Samsung, any iPhone app, any phones, any tablets, that kind of thing. And it's called Google Family Link. Now, it's a free download app, and basically you can do all sorts with that app. You can control your child's devices. You can add multiple children's devices to it. You can do things like isolate the camera. You can track them if they're out with their friends and they're a little bit late coming home. You can do absolutely all sorts with it. You can isolate the phone completely. And it's something that I would really, really, really recommend for anybody with children who have handheld devices, be it telephones, be it like tablets, things like that.
Yeah.
You can put this on it, and it will actually inform you as and when your child's doing things. So, for example, we tested it with my youngest godson, and we downloaded an app which absolutely boils my and I hate this app with a vengeance because it's very hard to locate people through it. And it's Snapchat, because on Snapchat you can actually be anybody you want to be.
Yeah.
You don't have to put any kind of real information in. And we've tested it with that, and we used Google Family Link to test it between two devices. And what we actually did was, obviously my godson's father, we were sat there. I was on one side of the room, he was on the other. And we were doing things like sending pictures, just random pictures. So like of the cushion on the sofa, the media wall, that kind of stuff. And then we were testing the capabilities of this Google Family Link. And you can even isolate camera operating in things like Kik, Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram. You can isolate the camera at any given point. So if you get a notification, say, again, we'll use the instance of co-parenting. So mum's at home, dad's at home, daughter's over at mum's, and dad gets the notification of somebody's trying to video call their daughter. Doesn't recognize the number, doesn't recognize anything in regards to this thing. You can instantly go in and shut that phone down and isolate it with this app.
That's amazing.
And it's completely free to download. It's called Google Family Link. And it's self-explanatory. It's very, very easy to set up. You can set multiple devices up to the one parental account. And like I said, it operates on Android, it operates on iPhones, tablets, anything like that. Google Family Link, I recommend completely to any parent out there who has like children with mobile devices, things like that. One, as a peace of mind for them, and two, an extra little bit of protection, say for instance the co-parenting situations where you can actually be sat at home and your child could be at the other parent's. You get the notification and you can shut that phone down. You can isolate that phone, and then that gives you the chance and opportunity to communicate with the other parent, you know?
Yeah. No, that's
Absolute fantastic app. Freely downloadable through all app stores and all operating systems, and I would really, really recommend that. Google Family Link, completely free of charge to download. And like I said, I was just scrolling through and I seen the Internet Safety for Kids thing,
And you
and I
rolled
sat
in.
and listened, and I thought, do you know what? I'm really going to recommend this.
Thank you so much, because that one hasn't been recommended this evening
No.
yet. So
Yeah.
I wasn't even aware of that one.
no, I wasn't. That's really helpful. Zoe, are you able to do a poll and put the Google, excuse me, Google Family tree? Is it no? What was it?
Google
Google
Family
Family
Link.
Link.
That one.
Link,
And
yeah.
there was another one in the chat. Link 360.
Live 360.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
can see
Live
it.
360. That works on a GPS kind of thing,
Oh,
and
okay.
the way Life 360 it works on like GPS, like I said, and the accuracy is about 3 foot away. So it will tell you can go into it and you can see where your child is when they're out playing. If your child texts you and says, "Oh, I'm at XYZ's house," you can go into this nifty little app and find out if they're at that house, because it will pinpoint that child to that location. The only downside to the Life 360 is if your child is tech savvy, which, come on, we all know children are very, very savvy with the internet and devices, they can turn the location settings off. The thing with Google Family Link, you can lock that device down so they can't do it. And you get a GPS system in the Google Family Link where you can still track your child's location.
So this sounds like the one to have.
I'm really annoyed at Camdy, man. He's been coming in my lives for a while now, and he's never expressed that he's this interesting.
Cheers, Rich. Cheers, mate.
I love you anyway.
With the Google Family Link,
Yeah.
does it? So, because I use Live 360 on my son's phone,
Yeah.
and if he doesn't pick up his phone, I can listen on his phone to what he's doing. Does the Google Family Link let you do that?
No, that's the only thing. But what you can do is you can
can
set
have-
screen time limits.
Yeah.
So, for instance, we all know how sneaky and mischievous our little darlings can be. And say, for instance, you're sat downstairs and you think, hold on, where's my little darling's device? You can go in and you can shut it down if they've sneaked off upstairs with it, that kind of stuff. So you can limit screen times. You can do set age-appropriate content. So limit what they can download. So going into app stores, downloading games, the limitation, you can do all that.
Yeah.
You can protect the privacy, so location sharings. You can set it where they cannot add and remove people. So say, for instance, if they're conversing with somebody on an app and they give a phone number, you can block that so that child cannot add that to their device.
Amazing.
You can lock down apps that have unknown sources. You can secure their accounts. So if your child goes in and they're a little bit tech savvy and you've changed all the passwords to their app store and things because they've been a little bit mischievous, you can lock that down so they cannot change it. You can change it through the app, but they can't change it through the device. It limits so much. You can keep an eye on them where they are. I think with the children you can add, it's either 4 or 5 devices. But you can also add, if you've got family members who are, I don't know, say for instance you've got an elderly, frail parent who lives alone, and they go out and do their own shopping, they're still very much independent. You can add them to it and you can find out, you know, if they're okay, where they are, that kind of stuff. It's absolutely amazing. We used to recommend it, especially when we were safeguarding real children through the live cam apps. We used to recommend it so much to these parents because, one, it's free. 2, there's so much you can do with the app, which actually puts limitations in place to prevent your kid putting itself in any harm or danger. Absolutely recommend it, Google Family Link.
That is brilliant. Thank you so much for popping up and sharing that. Really,
Not a
really
problem.
helpful. Really helpful. Thank you, darling.
Yeah, but if you just type into any of your app stores and things, Google Family Link, it will come up. Like I said, it's free to download. There's no limitations of, oh, you can only have it for a month, that kind of stuff. Completely free, all year round.
Quick
No cost.
question. Does it work? So, like, I'm Android and my daughter is Apple,
Yes.
so I can still track on that
Yes.
or control. Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And like I said, it does all mobile phones, it does tablets. There is another one that I recommend, and it's for some of the game platforms through this operating system. Nintendo Switch.
Yeah.
Now, Nintendo, over the past 18 months to 2 years, have had multiple complaints in regards to their apps and the way children are being approached, should we say, through different apps. Prime example, things like Roblox, them kind of games. And what Nintendo have actually put into place, it's called, let me just pull it up on screen. And it's basically for the Nintendo Switch, and it does the same thing. It limits everything, and you can monitor your child through a tablet or a phone, that kind of
I think my
thing.
cousin uses something like that on the Nintendo Switch to
Yeah.
the girls' access.
It's called Nintendo Switch Parental Control.
That's
Again,
it.
it's completely free to download. So any of your handheld devices, games consoles like your Nintendo Switch, throw that onto it as well.
Yeah.
It protects your children from all these strange individuals, should we say,
Yeah.
that they might be approached by through what seems to be a decent game for the kids to play, but we all know what hides in these games and these apps, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you've got the Nintendo Switch parental control as well.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much. We've put it up in the
Not a
poll.
problem.
And we're going to jump to Yasmin and hear what she has to say. Hey, Kit, welcome. Welcome.
I'm going to jump down, Miss Remy.
thank you so
for
much,
letting me
Candyman.
jump up and have a box.
And
I shall
keep up the
speak to
good
you very soon.
work catching the wrong uns out there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, people.
Take
All right.
care, darling.
Bye.
Can we not reset the poll so I can add the Nintendo Switch app, please?
Yeah, and can you also add the NSPCC one as well that you mentioned as well? Also, if you are in the room and you're enjoying this live, please can you do me a favour? You do not have to gift, although gifts are always appreciated. Please do keep tapping the screen for me. And if you wouldn't mind sharing this live with any of your friends or any other parents that you know who might find this useful, please do share the live. And if you're in the box, don't tap the screen because we'll get in trouble. Yasmin, hello, darling. I invited you up because as a fellow parent who I know from the interwebs, I just thought you might want to join the discussion, or if you have any stories at all about, you know, how you sort of monitor internet safety at home with your kids, or if you've got any horror stories of things and anything. Welcome.
I've only been listening last few minutes to the live, so I haven't heard what many other people have said apart from the guy who just spoke. But I think sometimes my opinion on these things are a little bit controversial. At least I get sort of raised eyebrows sometimes. So I mean, my kids are younger. I'm not my eldest is almost 12, so I don't think I've really got to that point of secondary school where apps change and stuff. But they've both got phones, and they've had phones since quite young because I'm a single parent, and I'd rather their dad calls them on their phones than calls me. So for us, practically, it's made sense for them to have phones. They've had iPhones for a couple of years now. I categorically just don't let them have most social media. They haven't got TikTok, they haven't got Snapchat, they haven't got Instagram. You know, they haven't. They do because they're not. To me, they're 9 and 12. They don't need those yet. I do think that when my son goes to secondary, we might have to have a conversation about Snapchat. But my thing is, I think all these apps are definitely helpful. They give peace of mind, etc. But I grew up in inner city London. I saw a lot of bad things growing up, and there were a lot of dangers. And my parents approached every single day or every new thing with a new risk assessment, and that's how I essentially bundle in internet safety with the general safety of my child. And for me, the priority, like as I say, apps are really good. I think for everyone's different, and everyone will have their routines or where their kids go or how their kids behave, how trustworthy their kids are will be completely different for every single parent. But it's just about knowing your kids. My two are completely different, chalk and cheese. With my son, he has had free reign adult access to YouTube for as long as I can remember, because I know he's watching Minecraft. Like, I know he is. I know he doesn't want to watch anything that I would disapprove of. If a swear word comes up, he goes, "Oh my God," and turns it over.
That's
My daughter, however, yeah, exactly. But my daughter, however, I have to keep an eye on her constantly. And then I hear to be fair, they are programs that are aimed at kids. But it's like, he dumped me or whatever. And I'm like, can you turn it over? Because it's not your night. You don't need to hear about who's ex. Whatever. Ridiculous. So with her, I have to keep an eye. But then in terms of like the other kids as well, I think for me, I'm just really hot on communication with my children constantly about what they're seeing, hearing, who's talking to them. And so, for example, my son has WhatsApp and my daughter does. She talks to family. There are settings within most apps that you can set up so that only contacts can message them, only contacts can put them in a group, or no one can put them in a group. So even within, you don't need to get a separate app and set all that up, because that's quite daunting for some people. But all of the different apps will have some settings. Obviously, you've got to trust your child to not change those settings. Some of them you can lock down. But, it's for me, it's not just about protecting my kid from things that he might see on the internet. It's also what is his conduct on the internet. So I constantly remind him, he's in a group chat with his friends at school. I constantly remind him, everything you say in that group chat, you need to be comfortable to say in front of your teacher. Because they get carried away, they send little memes that they don't realise are really out of order or rude or inappropriate, and it can escalate. And so for me, half of my focus is on making sure that my children do the right thing, and then that protects other children in as well. And he also, I'm pretty relaxed with, I don't do like an hour of screen time a day, because if we're out, we're busy and they don't have screens, and if we're in, they can do what they want. I've always treated tech as an activity equal to reading a book. It's just the way I am. I was brought up with a lot of tech. But at bedtime, it's bedtime, screens off or whatever, he will happily still, this also may change as he gets older, he will happily pass me his phone at night, knowing I know the PIN number, knowing if I want to, I will go through his phone, and knowing that if he's deleted his search history, I will also ask him why. So we have had all those kinds of conversations. And there have been some odd things that have popped up when I've checked through his phone, and we've had a chat about it. So I'm not going to out him here, but just silly little things, nothing too dangerous. But I'm like, why are you doing that? So for me, obviously, someone may have said it, and I might not have heard because I have only come in quite recently. But for
That's
me,
okay. I think you're saying a lot of the stuff that we've kind of been saying. Very much communication is important, having some sort of routine as well with the phones, and make sure we get the phones in the evening. Me and Melons, we both we get our kids' phones in the evening. We go through the phones and we have conversations, but also we have kids that are, like if one of her friends adds her into a group and she's in there, like within 30 seconds, she will look who's in there and just will, remove herself, because she's just like, no. And she also knows mummy's like, you're not going in any group chats. Like we've had problems. We've had to take it to the school. The school has dealt with it, but she now knows that, like, and the same thing, like if she sees something on YouTube and it's got bad language or it's too adult, she instantly scrolls out, like, or moves on. Like there's no, like I sit with her and I see her doing it. Like she knows, because even mummy's going to shout at me anyway, or like, so again, it's the conversations we have with our kids, and not every parent is comfortable or capable or even wants to have conversations with their kids. How do you deal with but my friend's mum lets them. I just, well, that's their mum.
Your friend's mum.
Yeah, that's your friend's mum, not me.
It's not me,
That's what my
hun.
parents always said to me.
Yeah.
My thing when I was a kid was always, can I go out? Can I go out? Why have I got to come home at 6 o'clock? Can't I come home at 8? That's what everything, you know, different risks, different stuff, but essentially the same conversation, because
Yeah.
I'm not your friend's mum. I'm your mum.
Exactly. Exactly. And sometimes with parenting, we've talked about this earlier, you have to be a bit tough. You have to enforce those boundaries. You have to, and even if they're pissed off with you, angry at you, have a tantrum, tell you they hate you, that's you parenting and making sure that they are safe, even if it means they're unhappy with you. Like, we are the adults and we have to be responsible because their brains are not yet fully formed, developed to know what we know.
But it comes back to that whole them understand. So I'm a dad to 2 boys, and my biggest thing is that they need to understand no.
Yeah.
As boys and as men, they
Yep.
need to understand no,
Facts.
and that starts from childhood. I probably say no more to the boys than I say yes, and I'm a fun dad.
Yeah.
But they've got to understand that when no is said, that is the final answer. Like, that is, it has such a knock-on effect. Is that whole boundaries conversation and that whole thing around ensuring that there are clear set boundaries and open conversation, like Yasmin's just said, is so important, particularly in a day and age where we have social media apps, but we're having to teach children how to socialize.
Yeah.
Like, make it make sense.
Yeah, I think getting them to reflect on their own experiences when you can as well. So I had a very bad upbringing, and I you know, at the time when I was a teenager and I had no boundaries, I had no parenting, I loved that I could go out clubbing when I was 14 years old in the proper nightclubs in London and, you know, take class A's like that. I had a terrible teenage years. When I became an adult, I looked back and I thought, you know what, all I really wanted was for someone to stop me and for someone to say, come on, Yasmin, stay on the right track. That's not right. You shouldn't be doing that. But my dad had gone and my mum didn't care enough. And so now, when I know I put boundaries in place that are difficult for my children, once they've calmed down, dealt with it, got over it, I genuinely try and have a conversation with them as often as I can and go, that didn't feel nice that I said no. I appreciate that, but can you understand why I said no? And actually get them to self-reflect on it. They start to really understand why the boundaries are there. Yeah. And that just helps next time, you know, they won't ask next time. Like, my kids sometimes go, I think you're probably going to say no to this. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm glad you know.
Yeah, same.
Conversation.
Same. She comes in, she already knows what the answer's going to be, and then tries to sell it to me.
I think that's the thing as well. If anyone is nervous of not being their kid's friend or not being, because I know what it's like, it's very different. Everyone parents differently. Yeah. I am very relaxed with my kids. I'm definitely a bit of their friend. I definitely I'm in control and I'm the adult, but there is a very chilled relationship because that's just our nature and it works. But for anyone who is scared of that, like putting their foot down or putting in boundaries when they're not used to doing it or when they feel bad because they're upsetting their kid, I promise you, as someone who went through a childhood and teenage years with no boundaries, I promise you those boundaries feel like love to your children. So just put them in, because they will absolutely respect you and love you more for it in the future.
And it strengthens the relationship. It really does strengthen the relationship. When kids know where the limits are, it just, like you just said, like, my kids are a lot younger, but like you said with both of your kids, like, they'll come in and go, oh, I don't know the answer to this. And then you can have a bit of banter about it and a bit of like, and then they start to try and utilize critical thinking to try and persuade you, which is amazing because critical thinking is awesome and lacks in this day and age.
We need more of that around.
I had so many boundaries growing up to the point of I was 18 years old, staying at home. I would be going on a night out. If I weren't home for 1 a.m, that door would be locked and she would be mad when I got home late. Like, I had so many boundaries, and I used to get frustrated, and I used to feel like I was missing out, and but actually I look back now, and now that I'm a parent, and now that I'm an adult, I can look back and think, do you know what, I'm actually grateful for the boundaries you did put in place, Mum, because had she not put the boundaries in place that she did, given where we were living and other circumstances, my life would have been completely different to what it is now. Completely different. And I am so grateful that she was forceful. And yes, we rowed. And yes, I probably told her I hated her one too many times. But she was doing what she was doing out of love.
Yeah.
And when you're a kid, you don't see it. You just feel your feelings. But when you grow up and look back,
Yeah.
because I said this to you the other day, Remy, like, probably our generation coming up with MSN and what was the other one, Chat Roulette and all the rest of it, we were probably the first generation to ever go through online rooming.
Oh, God, yeah.
And luckily for me, because of the boundaries and the conversations I had with my mum, I was able to put myself sort of, if something weren't right, I was able to recognise it and I was able to remove myself. Whereas, had she just not bothered and just let me go like some of my friends' parents did,
You would have been Angie.
thanks, Rich. I weren't quite going to go that far, but thank you.
Listen, we don't talk about leather in this room. Leather is banned. We are leather
Bad
free.
word, Rich.
Rich, how dare you?
Sorry, I couldn't resist that then. I've been waiting to say it all night.
But it is important. And I would also say, look, you know, when I became a parent, I kind of, yeah, this room is vegan, Rich. I very much from my daughter being a very young age kind of knew where my moral compass was and how I wanted to move forward and set boundaries, and no was used even when it like killed me and I knew she wanted a yes. And so that's what she's grown up with. So it's, you know, things like getting her phone or, you know, telling her she can't have Snapchat or whatever other apps is not really a big problem because I've been doing it from when she was young and enforcing that, yeah, I'm cool, fun mum, have jokes with you, but also like, you know, the buck stops with me. And I think for a lot of parents who have parented differently and maybe are at an age where their kids are now getting phones and they haven't really set those boundaries with their kids and are now venturing into this new territory, it is going to be hard. But also I would say it's never too late to start with the boundaries. It may be harder in terms of their responses to you and how that feels, but it's never too late to protect your kids and put your foot down when you need to.
And it's so important to impact that moral compass early on as well, because you get to that point, I was speaking about the schema earlier, you get to that point where you aren't the only influence on that moral compass. People outside of the family unit start to become more important in regards to how they build their identity. And if you haven't had an impact upon that moral compass up until that point, it's not impossible, like you just said, but it can become considerably more difficult because there is outside influence impacting upon those decisions and those opinions.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ella.
This is why circumstance into how we parent plays a massive part. So, like, for a lot of Dylan's early life, I really struggled to say no to him because he was so sick and he was spending 80% of his life in hospital, and I found it really difficult to say no. And now the struggle that he's having is I don't have that same guilt anymore because, I mean, he's not better, but he's better than he was. And he has got some sort of outside life that's outside of IVs and infections. And so because of that, I now have to put additional boundaries in place. but he's not used to having all these boundaries because they were never needed before.
Yeah.
I didn't need to put a boundary in place about who he was talking to on his phone because I was there with him all the time. I didn't need to put a boundary in place on him who he could play with on the street because he was never well enough to even think about going out to play.
Yeah.
So now I'm putting all these boundaries in. He's now struggling with understanding why now he's got all these additional rules that he never had before.
Yeah.
But we've got to do it. No matter how much that boy stands there and tells me he hates me and he's going to live at his grandma's, I have to put the rule there.
Yeah.
I like it. I think that how I put it towards when I've done internet safety talks during Internet Safety Week at schools is that if you pick up a saw, it's a tool. Do you pick up that saw and there's no rules? Like, can you use it anywhere you are? Or do you, as an adult, do you set out a set of rules? Forest schools is a perfect example. You always set out the rules. You set up a fire. You've got to make sure that your ring's at least a metre away from the fire. You have to make sure that your water bucket's there. You have to take precautions prior to using the tool. The tool isn't the issue. It's the instructions and the boundaries behind the use of that tool that, if there isn't that in place, ends up Mr. Boris getting ignited by the fire because the kids haven't put the right thing into place. And that's where the issue of course is never the tool. The tools are there. The tools are given to us to be used in the right way.
I totally agree with you, and that's why I sort of started my last point with I'm usually the controversial one, and then I don't think I said anything particularly controversial.
No, we
still
agree with you.
But I actually, all this smartphone-free childhood, I actually fundamentally disagree with it because I don't think taking away smartphones is the answer. Our children are going to be using smartphones for their entire adulthood and whatever comes next. It is part of life. I certainly educate my children as much as I can with tech. You know, I'm encouraging my son to use GPT, whatever it's called. He plays Dungeons and Dragons with his friends and he writes campaigns, and he was like, I've got no ideas. I said, why don't you ask ChatGPT? I'm encouraging them to use the tools that are available to them. And so for me to completely blame the smartphone and take it out of their lives completely, I genuinely don't think this is the answer. Sorry, my connection's a bit bad. I just genuinely don't think that's the answer. It's like, I don't believe that never letting kids have sweets will stop them wanting them when they're older. It's like you say, using the tools for what they're for with some rules around it.
But what I think you're doing exceptionally well as well, Yasmin, is that you're also teaching your children to put the tool down. And I think what we was chatting about earlier about like the experiences I've had with children in school and about how you're almost treating withdrawal, so addiction, because some of these children are permanently upon devices, and with developing minds that does have a negative impact. But what you seem to be doing exceptionally well is your children also know there's time to put it down, and I will put it down, and that's okay to put it down, and they don't live within that system because it sounds like you do a lot of stuff with the kids that is external from having to be on devices. So I think that's a really important part to make is, yes, technology is great, they need to understand it. ChatGPT, absolutely. If we can teach our kids about AI now, when they come to getting a job, they're going to be ahead of the curve because that's where the jobs are going to be. But we also need to be able to make sure that our children understand that there's a window there and you can go outside of that door and you can go outside and you can enjoy what's outside. And this isn't the real world as much as we can create positive interactions and promote positivity and build businesses. What really matters is what's out there and the interactions that we have face to face.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. We are going to be wrapping this room soon, so if you're in a room and you're not following me, please give us a follow. We are doing another parental or parenting live next week Thursday at 7 p.m. again. Next week, Tuesday, we have Women's Health Live. And next week, Thursday at lunchtime, we do a business live. We had a lovely live today, showcasing some TikTok businesses, allowing me to talk about what I do, which is business coaching and helping people with digital marketing and stuff. So we do lots of cool lives. Tomorrow will be a shit show where we just do gossip and silliness of TikTok.
Not the recorder. Not the recorder.
We'll see. I do like wind instruments, so they'll be coming.
Where's Martha Mooney? I haven't seen Martha Mooney in a while.
Yeah, where has Martha Mooney been?
Where's
Rich?
Martha gone?
Where's Martha, Rich?
Do we have a topic for next Thursday, Remy?
No, we don't. Actually, that's a really good question. So if you're in the chat, come join us, Candyman. If you're in the chat now. And you... Actually, I have got some topics somewhere. I've written them somewhere. I don't know where. But if you have some ideas about different parenting topics, actually, I think I've sent them to you, Zoe. I might have dumped them on you. If there are any parenting topics that you would like us to cover, feel free to go ahead and put them in the chat, and my lovely whiz of a PA, Zoe, will grab them. But if there's anything coming up for you, Rich, that you think would be a good discussion to have around, or you, Yasmin?
The stages of co-parenting and the realities of it, because when I speak about co-parenting, I speak about co-parenting. I don't have the children 50-50, but I consider that we co-parent because we're on the same page and so on and so forth. I know a lot of people will say it's only if it's 50-50, but I disagree. Yeah. But I think the stage of it, because it's not, or I paint it in a very pretty light, and it's amazing now, and there's still things we need to work on. But it's not always been like that, and it's been very different because I have two different children with two different mums. It's been very different with both of them, and I think it'd be quite cool to talk brutally through those stages, because I'll always be honest, like there's much that I am to blame for, because particularly at the beginning of that phase, there's a lot of emotion going around depending on what the relationship breakdown was. So I think that would be quite an interesting one to
that's a really good topic, Rich. I think that's a really good topic.
I've got one.
Go on.
Parenting preteens and the changes that they go through.
That's a great topic. Yasmin, any suggestions?
No, I'm just a bit a single mum with a broken dishwasher, so I've got nothing in my mind right now.
But listen, single mum itself is a massive topic.
We could help you fix the dishwasher on live.
I'm hoping that my YouTube tutorial has helped, but we'll see in about half an hour when the cycle's finished.
Yeah, single parenting. That's actually a good one, Yasmin. I don't think people really understand how hard.
No, and I do think if people want a genuine, people often talk about parents sticking together and stuff. And I feel even like some of my absolute closest friends, they do not understand even half of my reality. If they did, they'd stop telling me I'm boring for not going out.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's also a good one, Chrissy, helping your child deal with bereavement. Also close to heart for me. My daughter's dad's no longer here. Chrissy, you went through that with me. You know how hard that is. And yourself. But and for you. But that is a really good one, actually, Zoe. And helping your child deal with bereavement. Yeah. And especially when you're grieving as well. And then you've got to hold the space for your child as well. It's a huge topic. And there might be tears from me.
Yeah, I'd be really interested in that one, because my eldest has got something just around the corner that they need. So I'd love to, as horrible as will be here, how that was worked through.
Yeah, and I got some books during that time as well. So I'll try and find some books, because there's some great books on helping your child through bereavement as well. Oh, SEN and SEN parenting as well is another topic. Helping children with big events Zoe, there's loads for you to capture as well here. Helping children with big events. Let me see if I can just screenshot a couple of those, just in case we miss anything. All right, thank you, everybody. You got books as well, Chrissy. Amazing.
I thought I'd share what my son is currently doing. We are a tech household.
What VR game is he playing?
What you playing? Probably Gorilla Tag. He's obsessed. What you playing, Cal? Gorilla Tag.
No, just the other day, somebody recommended that I get the Meta goggle thing because with my ADHD and also with my current struggles of focusing and whatever, and there are specific sort of games that you can use that just allow you just to focus on that like moment in time when you're in the goggles, when you're in this imaginary world. And she was saying how much it's really been helping her. So I think I'm going to go and Google and try and buy myself like a second-hand pair. And
visual guided
sleep.
meditation.
Say that again, Yasmin. Sorry.
Sorry, I was saying that sounds better than sleep to me.
I know. Sorry, Rich. Go on, Bab.
I was just saying a visual guided meditation through VR will be, because I struggle with the same things. Mine's just been meditation. I love a good meditation and a candle. But yeah, I know it. But I feel like yes, something like that. Have a look at it's a bit more pricey, but what Apple's just brought out. You're an Apple user, aren't you?
I can't play with Apple. Apple money is. I just refuse. I just refuse.
Before you shut down, can I catch up with you about what you do? Because that is possibly the direction that I might be going in.
Yes, absolutely you can. Absolutely. And Zoe's told me off today and Kelly's told me off this week that I don't talk about what I do enough, which is particularly why the Thursday live is really good. Have you looked at Loop earplugs? I've got some Loop earplugs, yeah. But yeah, I do need to talk a bit more about what I do because it's important. And there are lots of people on here who are in certain niches or they have big following and they don't necessarily know how to monetize their niche, their speciality, their knowledge. And that is something that I love to do and I'm good at. So absolutely. But yeah, we can have a conversation about that, Rich, for real. How are you getting on, Yasmin? Are things moving for you just on that in terms of...
Yeah, I've struggled because I've been doing 4 days a week for an app. So I went back to sort of, well, it was supposed to be a couple of days a week freelancing, but it turned into a bit of a like long-term contract. But that comes to an end in 3 weeks. And it's sort of tailing off. So 3 days next week, and then sorry, I can hear the kids putting the dogs to bed in the background. 3 days next week, 3 days a week after, 2 days, and then gone, which is actually like great timing for the summer holidays, and it is definitely forcing me to pivot into what I've been trying to focus on for about 3 years. But obviously, I just sort of float along to where the money is. But I do think that restricts my long-term goals.
Yeah, it does, because you haven't got the time then to focus on it, whereas now you're going to have the time, so I can kick you up the arse and get you going.
Yeah, I really, really haven't had the time, but I've got the time now. So yeah, I'm excited.
Well, we should have a chat at some point. Anyway, I'm going to wrap, my darlings. Thank you, everyone, for being here for our first parenting.
Just to let you know, Remy, next week's Business Live is full. So if anyone wants to add on, it'll be for the week after now.
Perfect. I'm really enjoying doing these lives. These are stimulating my brain far more than talking about leather handbags. Thank you so much for coming up, Yasmin. Thank you, everyone who's come up. Rich and Zoe. Who else did we have? We have Charlie and Jade, Ginger Jade. Thank you, everyone who's contributed, and you guys in the comments as well. I hope you've enjoyed tonight, and we will do another parenting. We'll do another parenting live next week, Thursday. But thank you all so much. I'm back tomorrow at 12, being my usual silly self, and I can't wait to see you all then.
Make sure you get lots of sleep, Remy, so we don't have feral Remy tomorrow, please.
I'll try my best.
Although
feral Remy on Wednesday, I thought was a good time.
Yeah, it was. It was hilarious.
Now I'm unemployed, I can watch you without being disrupted.
Rich is coming.
You're not unemployed, you're just transitioning, Rich, into...
That's we'll call it transitioning. I do a lot of transitioning.
There's nothing wrong with that, Rich.
Oh, what do you mean you had Nightmare of Foos? I'm so glad you loved it, Handsome Pigeon. Thank you for being here. Right, I am going to go. Thank you, everybody. Big love to you all, and I will see you all soon. Take care, everyone. Bye, guys.